Good day and welcome to the Strong Ambition Podcast. I'm your host, Rylan Qualley, and we're going to dive into a little bit of the mindset and a little bit of training, but more so of the entrepreneur mind with Joe Marcoux. Joe Marcoux, I got to meet through Vincent Del Monte, is he actually helps us with sales objections, and he has the Sales Objection Dojo. That is his own business that he runs. But what's really cool about Joe, I met him through Vincent Del Monte, and I didn't know that I was where he was from or anything. And he said Winnipeg. And it was like, oh, hey, I'm a Winnipeg boy too. So we hit it off. And it's so cool to hang out and talk to him because he's got such high energy, great vibration. And he taught me so much, even within sales. But this conversation goes even deeper. This conversation goes into his challenges as a business owner and also just as a person. So this conversation gets pretty real, way deeper than I anticipated. So I don't want to waste any time, and I'll let Joe tell his story about he became a very successful entrepreneur and some of the major things he had to overcome. So without further ado, here is Joe Marcoux. Good day, Joe. Happy to have you here. How are you, sir?
Fantastic. I like to say that when I'm in the position of other people that love the health, wellness, and a strong ambition lifestyle, I couldn't be happier. I'm really honored to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, I can't imagine a better guest from people I've met recently. You're always high energy. And this is something we're going to talk about for sure because of that exact positive energy. We were just talking off air how you're an 11 out of 10. And I love it. I love that strong ambition just comes out of your vibration all the time. So why don't we dive into this so people get a context to your story? And sure. That's my favorite part is someone's story and go to the grassroots. I know you're a fellow Winnipegger and that's what gets
man
meeting you. So start with grassroots, how you started up and how you got into the business that you're in now.
So my story kind of goes, it started in the exercise equipment industry. So, and I'm going back now over 30 years. Originally, I got into the idea of wanting to lift weights to put on muscle size. I was a teenager. I was in, I was in 10th grade or grade 10, depending on what country you're in. And I wanted to be able to get onto some of the sports teams. And like, even as a short guy, because I'm 5'9", well, now I'm more like 5'8" as I'm in my 50s and I'm shrinking. I just didn't have that massive size that would compel somebody to want to, and I love the game of hockey. I just wasn't a 6-footer or a 6'3" guy. And, so that was one of the challenges. I got into lifting weights because I really dug the idea of these physiques. And I was also a fan of comic books. So I was a fan of the X-Men and the Avengers, like well before these movies, which are now huge, because it's so cool to be able to see those things that as a kid, to see these physiques now come to life, right? And so that's where it started. And then it progressed into this opportunity came up. It was somebody who I knew who knew somebody else was like, hey, Joe, you're into this whole bodybuilding thing. And again, I was in my teens, and it was like this store is looking for a manager. And it was a place in the south end of Winnipeg in St. Vital on Meadowood, because you probably know where that is, just outside of the St. Vital Mall. And it was a small boutique store called Fitness World. They were opening it up. And I went and spoke to the owner of the company. And he was a manufacturer of exercise equipment here in Winnipeg called Pulse Fitness Systems. And they said, I went in, had an interview, and they said, you're hired. I had zero experience. I just had a passion for lifting weights and exercise and fitness. And so I literally went in feet first into the exercise equipment industry. And I took it upon myself to learn how to sell. And one of my first sales teachers was Zig Ziglar. Then after that was Jim Rohn. And Jim Rohn, who you may know, if you don't know who Jim Rohn is, you might know a guy by the name of Tony Robbins. Well, Jim Rohn was Tony Robbins' mentor. So I got the opportunity to meet Jim and work with him, and it literally catapulted me in my career. By the age of 20, I got the opportunity to buy into that store, but there were other people getting involved, and there were suddenly too many ladles literally in the soup. So I opened up my own exercise equipment retail store on Pembina Highway in Winnipeg at the age of 20 years old. And yeah, I think of it now. I mean, I've got kids that are, 30, 28, 26, 20, 23. And I mean, I think I was 20 and I was a punk in that industry of selling, and it was high ticket back then, treadmills for people's homes that were selling for $5,000. I'm talking, 25, 30 years ago. And so I had to keep learning my craft of sales and selling, where a lot of people have this thing of, it's just, like when you think sales, what's the thing that comes to mind for you, Riley?
Well, I've had more experience with it, but there is still this, I've gotten used to understanding that I'm there to help someone, but there is this ickiness to it of sales.
Yeah, there's a stigma.
The stigma. Yeah, that's a good term. Yeah. It's like the salesman, the snake oil salesman.
Right. And yet where somebody like you, who you have this ambition of helping people, and I came from the exact same space, I got into the exercise equipment aspect of it because I knew that these tools were making an effect on people's lives, where they could have back then it was the whole idea of having the convenience of exercising at home with health club quality equipment. And so we did extremely well. And I had a young business partner with me, and we did very well. Like, we hit 7 figures within our first year. And we were just, young and just full of vinegar and everything else, as you can imagine. We just went for it, man. And so after 5 years of having our own business together, from 20 to 25, we did a merger with another company that you might know of called Fitness Depot. And we were the 7th location, as memory serves me. It was 7th location in Canada at that point. And within 18 months, Fitness Depot expanded to 38 locations across the country. And we were part of that. So we saw this systematic approach to growth. And I left the company because there was some challenges in terms of the leadership. And again, there's the company's still around today. I sold out, made a profit. It was a wonderful experience. And then I was still involved in the fitness industry on the sales side, more from the manufacturer side. I became a representative, and I became a sales coach at that point. And in 2007, I'll fast forward it. 2007, I wrote a book called Boutique Thinking in a Big Box World. And that's when things really took off. I was getting hired to go speak at events, go speak live for companies, and go help them develop their sales process, which I call the Army of One sales process. And then in part of Army of One, I developed this concept called the SOS, the Sales Objection System. And because of the pandemic, I couldn't travel anymore to go and do speaking engagements. And so I went online, and I should have gone online way earlier. Thank God for the pandemic, because now I've got a thriving online business where I help people who want to get better at handling objections so that they could help people. And so, like you and I are having a conversation. And doesn't it make sense? Like, wouldn't it feel good to be able to just have a conversation with someone where they feel compelled at the quote unquote end of the conversation, where they go, yeah, you know what, man, you're a good dude. You got your message across. You've asked me questions and you've been listening. I want to say, yeah, I'm in. And so that's when people feel compelled to say, here, I'm in, and they're going to give you money in exchange for the value that you have to offer, as opposed to going, I just bought this and shit, man, I just feel like I just got sold. And that's not the feeling that I want to give people. And that's why people join our program, because they learn a authentic approach to a system that allows them to handle objections so that they can get to the outcome, which is what? The outcome of people feeling great of, here, take my money because I want to I want to buy what you have. Because people don't want to be sold. They want to choose to buy.
That's very well stated. And it's a really, really honest approach to what people are trying to do in sales. And it's hard for people to actually appreciate that until you're on a call with someone. I've seen it many times. I've heard it from people who, I'm associated with him, and they'll say, oh, that guy looks like a snake oil salesman. I'm like, actually, he's just doing honest work. He's just very upfront about his calls to action. And
right.
Until you have a conversation with someone trying to help you, it's really just always going to appear in that kind of aggressive framework. But That's the truth is like a salesman is always trying to help a person, it might make you uncomfortable because you're worried about that. You're worried about being had and taken. And when
Mm-hmm.
realistically salesmen are, hey, what do you need? What can I do for you? And
The
I
good
really love
ones.
that notion. And I'm really curious from your, because like that inspiration must have been incredible to come up with that kind of a mentorship. Was
Oh
that like
God, yeah.
really big game changer for you, or were you already kind of intuitively into sales?
No, the answer to that coaching made the biggest difference. And if I could go back to my younger self, I would say to my younger self, especially when I was in my 30s. In my 20s, I got a lot of coaching and I had this geometric rise. In my 30s, I let my ego get the best of me. And then it cost me so much on a variety of different levels in my personal life, in my business life. Had I had a coach throughout those challenging times, I would have made leaps and bounds more. Not so much in terms of, I mean, I'm very comfortable financially, and that's not the point. The point would have been I would have made more of an impact, and that would have made an even bigger difference because we're just renting the money that we get, right? Like this, I leave here, money's not coming with me. It's going right back in the pool, and everybody else gets to rent it whenever they want. I mean, there's the hope is that I leave a legacy of some kind where I made a difference in people's lives. And that, when I'm looking at your background of strong ambition, it's those two words, having the strength of being able to stretch out of your comfort zone and deal with the discomfort. And yet the ambition, some people, it's misguided. They think that it's all about money. And to me, the ambition linked with the obligation of helping people, then the outcome is win-win. Because if I help you get what you want, and Zig taught this when I was a kid, Joe, if you help as many people as you can get what they want, you'll get everything that you want. Like it's that simple. Yet the problem is, there are some salespeople that are well-meaning, and I'll even shift it to whether no matter if you're selling products or if you're a coach or if you've got something to help people with, like the thing is that if you love what you have so much and you believe in what you have so much, if you're missing out on asking questions, then what do you think's happening in the conversation? It's all one-sided. So doesn't it make sense to just, hey, I want to ask you something, and you ask a question, and then we got two of these. I'm pointing at my ears if you're just listening. So 2 ears and then one mouth. And so you ask the question, and then let's listen in and find out do they have a problem? And if they have a problem, how can I solve it? And if I can't solve it, can I point you in the right direction to someone else who can? Because unfortunately, like there's some salespeople out there that they just do the telling, and then they just push and push and push. And I think, you tell me, Ryland, do you think people today are a little bit wiser to that and they don't want to be pushed into anything?
Oh, it's getting harder to sell, even like with social media.
Right.
It's like it's so funny, like going through some of the old stuff in 7FM, and they're talking about how call to action on everything, call to action on everything. And the most recent discovery of social media is, okay, so people understand call to actions are kind of salesy. So
Yeah.
it's an ever-changing thing. And you got to come away with the sincerity. What you're saying is so true. And what was really cool about learning from a sales coach was when I would have these calls, it didn't feel like a sales call. It felt like I was sincerely just finding things out about them. Now it is, in essence, trying to make sure you're hitting on the right pain points that they have the problem that you can solve, and trying to predict some of it. And that sets you up to put you in a good position to sell something. But if these predictions say, someone comes to me for fat loss or comes to me for diet nutrition, I say, hey, so do you have a hard time with, yo-yo dieting? No. Okay. Do you have a hard time with eating chocolate? No. It's like, okay, do you like strength training? No. Hey, we just might not actually be a good fit then. And that's an honest conclusion to that equation. And so when you're doing these kind of like sales is that process. If someone came to you in the store for equipment and it's just like, Yeah, I'm looking for equipment. Okay. And there's like, yeah, but I like swimming. Okay.
Right. Yeah, and the answer to that is there is a piece, there's always a solution. It's like, okay, there is such a thing. I don't know if they're still around. It was called a SwimX pool. So it's like there's a SwimX pool and you have to build an addition to your house to be able to do it. Is that something that you're curious about? Because otherwise you could just, drive over to the Pan Am pool and do some laps, like there's, then there's local pools. And, it's interesting because these questions that you ask, like, do you have a problem with chocolate, for example? Like, I love chocolate. So the question could be turned around, for example, instead of, do you have a problem with chocolate, where that's a yes or no question, it would be, hey, so if you were to say foods that you love, what would they be? And then we listen. And somebody could list off a variety of foods, and they could be a variety of healthy foods. And then it's like, so you might hear, I love boiled chicken breast, and I love steamed broccoli, and I love brown rice in small quantities. And, like suddenly I'm hearing a variety of healthy, I love raw cauliflower, although I'll sometimes use, coconut oil with turmeric and Frank's Red Hot. And suddenly I'm like, okay, dude, you know exactly what to do here. So, however, then the question would be, so if you had a challenge with these healthy foods, it seems, is it portion control, or is it something that you believe might be more metabolic? And so suddenly they might give you a hint at what the actual problem is, because somebody like you, who's an expert in that field, they might say, well, it's portion control, or they don't know how much of a good thing that they need. Or they might say, well, I think it's metabolic. And it's like, okay. So then it leads to the next question, would be something like, so if somebody like myself could give you a systematic approach to help raise your metabolism and not necessarily change your diet, does that sound something that would interest you? And that's a sales question. However, the key here, Ryland, is, can you deliver?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can't deliver, then it's a horrible question to say, right?
But what I love about that whole sentiment you gave us there was that, I just threw some quick examples, and you had this ability to, your radar for language was on, and I'm good at that when I'm talking to clients. I'll have a radar for certain words, like, hey, that's a trigger word, we got to be careful with that. You're so nuanced in the language and body language. This is something I've done when I've done some of your trainings, is like you have just an incredible capacity to appreciate language and body language. So I'm really curious where your inspiration and where some of the teachings kind of came from that.
Oh, this is loaded. So I would go all the way back, starting on, I'll give credit to my stepmom. She was first. My stepmom threw out this thing called NLP.
Okay,
and then my father got into NLP, and I'm looking back and I'm wondering, hang on, on my so here's an example of Shelley Rose Charvet, where it's the 14 patterns of mastering the language of influence, words that change minds. So is my intention to be the Jedi master, where these aren't the droids you're looking for, kind of thing, and these aren't the droids that we're looking for? Like, that's not what I'm talking about here. What I am talking about, however, is there is science, there is backed up science about how the brain works and how we could use language and body language, tone of voice, pacing, inflection, in such a way where we influence people. Again, influence. I'm not talking, there's a difference between the word influence and manipulate. So we need to be very careful. For those of you listening, I'm not looking to manipulate people. I'm looking to influence, right? So it's like, if I want to gain friends and influence people, right? If you haven't heard of that book, look up, Napoleon Hill or Dale Carnegie. I mean, these are classic techniques. And so it starts there. Starts with my parents, and then leads into Tony Robbins, which goes down, and the rabbit hole just keeps going. And then I start to watch people like the professionals. When I went and saw Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, these are the guys that wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. They would, I did several workshops with both of them. I did workshops with Bob Proctor, who passed away last year. Bob Proctor was one of the stars of a movie called The Secret, which was talking about the law of attraction. These are all things. So neurolinguistic programming isn't necessarily things that we say. It's also things that we say to ourselves to place in our own subconscious mind that gives us the ability to be strong in our own authority, in our own minds, so that we could implant our own future ambitions to make them real. And it's for some people, it's woo-woo, and that's fine. You don't have to believe it. The fact of the matter is that whether you believe it or not, you're right.
You just proved it.
That's it. And so, yeah, this book was really interesting, and the little things about the way that we look at each other in conversation. Are you using body language? Are you nodding, or are you shaking your head no? Because 55% of the way we communicate is body language. And then what's my tone of voice? Thinking of, Chris Voss, who's the writer of Never Split the Difference.
Awesome.
And this great book. And the concept of how to negotiate to come out win-win, where both people feel really good with that outcome. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, the great question. I think that a lot of people forget about the power of language, and it takes training. No different than, you built up strength and size. Do you do it by one workout?
Reps and reps.
You got to put in the reps, and you got to take the time to stay away from it, recover, and then go back at it again. And this is where a lot of people, they want to do and don't get me wrong, I get asked, hey, Joe, can we hire you for a workshop? People will get great value from having me at a workshop. They get even better value with what we call our hybrid approach. Have me come in, do a workshop, and then we follow up weekly for a minimum of 12 weeks. This way we can put it in. Just like you're gonna develop the muscle size, you're gonna develop the strength to be able to get to that 405 squat. Well, guess what? You don't just show up in the gym, never squatted before, and put 4 plates on. It's just not going to happen. You're going to get hurt. Well, in sales, if you think that you're just going to have a conversation with somebody and then you're going to close, quote unquote, the sale, that's not how it works. You're going to get hurt. It's called loss of opportunity. And then the other thing that's crazy is that people tend to forget is if you lose a sale, right, or you don't, quote unquote, close, it's not just the opportunity loss right there with that one person. It's the ripple effect, because for us, like for my business, I typically will get 3 to 5 referrals for every person that goes into my program. So, right, it's not just one person, it's a minimum of 4. That's huge when you think about it from that perspective. If somebody doesn't come across, and I like to say, just get across the starting line. If they don't start working with me, and for some reason, if one of my team members, they don't influence someone to feel good enough to say, yeah, you know what, I'll buy into the program, then we miss out realistically on 4x the opportunity. That's huge.
Yeah. No, and you think of that ripple effect, the thing I really value is we were talking about impact, and it's super important to your impact, and it motivates you. One of my friends had her father pass away recently, but what was really inspiring about his story is he helped anyone he could. There were so many people he would give loans to, just straight up give them money to start their business. And then he had said to his daughter, I employ not just 100 people, I employ 100 people and I help provide for their families. And so it's that kind of effect. So like when you say that for referrals too, and then I've thought about that for myself, when I'm working with clients, is like, if that one person has a better life to treat their family, significant other, and provide for more people, that ripple effect, that's really motivating stuff, right? Because that's like,
it's huge. Think of the fathers, for example, that you're dealing with. And when you change somebody's perspective, Ryland, on themselves, their mindset, and then all of a sudden their physical body has gone through this transformation where now all of a sudden they feel strong, and that comes across everywhere. What do you think the impact is on their children?
Right. Yeah.
Like, you can't put a price on that. It's priceless. It's
Right.
absolutely priceless because, I can speak to my own kids. They're all involved in exercise, and it doesn't mean that they don't have fun. I mean, and be frivolous. I mean, it's just the human experience. They have a stronger dedication to the concepts of health and wellness and exercise than the vast majority that are out there. And that has nothing to do with the fact that I forced them to do it. I simply modeled the behavior and they ended up doing it themselves. Like, right. How much better than, like, it can't get any better.
Modeling is one of the best forms of inspiration.
That's it.
I'm really curious about that. Like we talked a little bit about like what was influencing you as far as the sales and stuff like that. But you created the Army of One, and you're such a high energy guy. What was some of the big influences for you to be this ambitious, to continue to drive forward this way?
This is cool, and I appreciate that question. So, I didn't grow up. I mean, it was very interesting. We grew up as a family when my father and mother were married. We grew up and we had wealth. Like I remember being just a little kid, like a knee high, and like Christmases were like insane. There were just so many, like it was too many gifts. I literally remember it. And then my parents got divorced. And then all of a sudden it was like we had nothing on both sides. It just seemed like everything fell apart. So my mom and it was crazy. My mom and my brother and I lived in a small duplex in St. Norbert. And my mom made it work. And she talks about how she bought the house with $50 down and a smile. She convinced the bank and this other family member to co-sign for a mortgage. I mean, I think back of that, I remember. And then my father was well off. He left the province and started anew in Ottawa. So it was crazy times. So and because he was starting over, he had to start from scratch. So both households that I would be visiting, mostly, it was like 85 to 90% of the time with mom, and then summers with my dad. We weren't living high on the hog anymore for some reason. It was really bizarre. So where we, as a little kid, we had everything. Then all of a sudden we had nothing. And I'm not saying that we lived poor, like we weren't living in boxes under a bridge. But my mom, she had to be very careful with her budget. We were still involved in activities. She knew that, getting the kids involved in sports, getting me into Taekwondo and martial arts was something that was, I was going to pay for it myself when I got old enough to be able to have my own, my first paper route and all that kind of thing. And I was paying for it. So that I knew, the discipline thing. And so those things helped me not get involved in some really crazy crap where like drugs and again, as we get older, you start to, you understand that, hey, you start drinking a little bit as a teenager and whatnot. The fact of the matter is the ambitious part of it hit when I was really young. I knew that I wanted to have, again, I wanted to have what I lost as a kid. And the fascinating part about that was I wanted to be rich when I was a kid. I wanted to have stuff as a child. I didn't know that what really mattered was, now that I'm, in my 50s, it's the relationships that I have that make me rich. I'll tell you, I have phenomenal relationships with both my parents, despite having a short period of time where I hated my father. Like, I didn't want to talk to him. I hated him for leaving mom. I hated him for having the affair that he had on my mom. I want to effing kill the guy. And then as I got older and I experienced breakups of my own, I started to learn a little bit more about relationships and my place in that. So the ambitious part of it was having money affords me to be able to give back. having money affords me to have coaches. Having money affords me to be benevolent. And, self-actualizing people have no choice but to be. And I want to continue to grow as a person. And so some of it is free out there to go and learn. What I find is when I pay to learn something, I pay more attention, right? Those that pay attention. And it's also, I surround myself with other people, like somebody like yourself, right? So this idea of strong ambition, I want to be healthy. I want to be fit. I want to live a better quality of life through the benefits of total health and exercise. I do want to have oodles of wealth in the intent that I can give back, because I told you earlier, I ain't taking anything with me. When I leave here, I'm going to be buried in a suit with no pockets, because there's not going to be anything coming with. Hopefully the memories.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Again, you talk about that ripple. I've always had this belief in some regards to that whole discussion of like, you don't get to take anything with you. The only thing you know for sure is, like, regardless of your beliefs, the one thing that you can be certain of is your memories.
Yeah.
And the likelihood of who you've left behind, like the impact. And I started to reflect on identity as more the rooms you're not in than the rooms you're in. So Joe as a person are actually more of like, without you being in that room, that's the impact you have. Because if you're spoken about, or if you're influencing things in the world that you're not even around, that's the ripple. And
and hopefully positively, right? I mean, and I say this tongue in cheek. I did a speech last year in Southern California, and I've been asked to go back. I'm actually going to this worldwide dealer conference for an electric bicycle company called Pedigo in December. And last year I did it, and there were some people that were talking, and this is an example of how you can get into your own head and really it can wreak havoc. So you can speak to 500 people, and you can have, even if it's 50 that hated what you had to say, and 450 loved it. The 50 people that hated, or even if it's, in this case, it was a couple people had said a couple things that I had heard, and they didn't know that I was in earshot. And I walked up to them and I said, "Hey guys, I'm just curious, what was it specifically that you didn't like? I'd love to know." And they were in shock that they had said what they had said. And it plays on me at times. Like, I'll fully admit, it's still, I don't have mastery over I don't give a shit, because I do give a shit. I want, we all want people to like us. I mean, isn't it Maslow's hierarchy? It's the feeling of belonging is so important to a good life. So when somebody doesn't like what you have, and I want to offer people an ability to, do better so they can help more people, and then people are kind of like, whatever, like that feeling of belonging, suddenly you lose it. So it can wreak havoc. So be careful. And the answer to that is keep moving forward. Yeah. Like, I still pick myself up off the ground and go, okay, fail forward, go. I have no choice.
Yeah, that's a big part there. You have no choice. And one of the things I've kind of recognized, because just being in the social media space, is like when you get comments or someone that doesn't like something you have, and at first it's like trolls. And it's just, the first time I ever had it, it was this like, I just put a boxing video up, and I was actually just posting it for a client, but I put it as like shareable for everyone. Yeah. And I started getting these comments, and I'm like, showing my girlfriend, I'm like, look, like I'm getting some haters. And then she's like, dude, you have like 50,000 views. I'm like, oh yeah. And then, so what I recognized is that you have to earn the right to be hated. Yep. To the probability of being hated, where people will be vocal. So it's like, yep, if you're getting 2 or 3 bad comments, you probably got hundreds of likes.
Even if it's 50-50, Ryland, Grant Cardone, love him or hate him. And I really do like a lot of his content, because I can take it at face value. I don't love all of it. And he said this, and I agree with it. If you don't have people disliking or hating what you're having to say, you're actually missing out on the impact that you should be making.
Right.
It's valid. It's valid. It's not to say that I'm going in being contrarian on purpose, right? Just speak your truth. If it's your truth, then speak it.
Yeah, and it's you got to show what you stand for sometimes.
Yeah,
And it's like, I understand. Like I can be too understanding because I can lines, but then there's certain things that I will, it's literally what you stand for, and it's so valuable to show that, like, hey, this is definitely that I'm going to put my foot in the ground on, and that shows that you believe.
Plant your flag.
Plant your flag. That's your value. And that's super important when people are looking for guidance on things. So with that, I'm really interested because, being an entrepreneur and you had this drive to make impact, it's hard, as we talked about, off air, and it's just up and down. What were some, big lessons that helped you, or what some tough times you had to get over that, you had to overcome to, get where you're at now?
Yeah. So the biggest one that comes to mind, and again, there's a quote that comes to mind here. There's two things. First thing is in anywhere in your life, you're better off to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. So if you really want to learn something, anything, even if you don't use it, right, you're better off to be an absolute dangerous monster and hold yourself back. That's a virtue. That is something that is virtuous in and of itself, because to say that, I'm weak, therefore I'm good, that's not true. You're weak and you're going to get the shit kicked out of you. If you're strong and you choose to not use certain techniques, that's a virtue. And so I think back at a time in my life where I was ambitious for the wrong reasons and I lost sight of what was important. So I can tell you up front, I was married. My wife had an affair with my best friend. So you hear that part right up front and you go, oh my God, right? And how did I feel? I felt stabbed in the back by both the woman who I had at that time was in love with, had 2 children with, and made a commitment in front of God and a community that I was going to be with for the rest of my life. And the truth was, in that marriage, unfortunately, I was effing miserable. I was miserable, bro. I hated the marriage. And I didn't hate her. I hated the marriage. And there were things that I wasn't doing in that marriage that could have made it so much better. And we could have had something amazing, at least in terms of what I'm responsible for. And then I had my best friend, who happened to be, and still is, godfather to my youngest daughter, who, I'm pulling the knife out of my back. So, dude, like, and I speak of it now because I've spoken about it before. It was by far the hardest thing I ever had to go through. And I mean, I thought about suicide at one point. I literally planned it out. How would I do it so that there wasn't a mess? It was easy to pick up, leave a note, all of it. And then it was like, well, I've got 2 kids. Like, these girls need me. And it made me, that whole situation made me instantly a better father. It made me realize, like, hey man, I'm fighting for my daughters here. And so we went through this process of when we separated, because she was adamant I'm having the separation and she wanted out. I was ready to do everything I possibly could to save it, and she would have nothing to do with it. It was like, no. And again, here's the lesson out of this, Ryland, is I needed to look at myself, not at her. Easy to point the finger at somebody and go, she did this and my best buddy did this. It's like, no. What did 3 fingers pointing back? I know it's cliche. When you point the finger at someone, you have 3 coming back. Well, what am I responsible for in this? I was so ambitious to make money as opposed to have a great family and a great life. I thought that money was the thing. And it's like, listen, you can have an ambition. It needs to make sure, like, what's my why? Why am I doing it? So my ambition today is, and I can look over at my vision board and I'm looking at this house that my wife and I, my current wife, my wife, Sean, and I are in the process of building. Do we have the cash in hand right now to just go, build a house on Lake of the Woods? No, we don't have that right now. right? We live in a very modest home here in South Winnipeg. We're super comfortable. We don't worry about money. We're very, very lucky that way. And we bought property and we're looking at building, and we're doing a piece by piece every year for this house that eventually will manifest, because it's being manifested. And I go back to that time where when I was previously married and I went through all that pain, and I go, what did I do? And what didn't I do? And what I didn't do was keep an eye on the ball. Like now, my relationship with my daughters, and now with Shauna and her 3 biological children, who are like, we're all adult, like they're all adults now. We all get along so well. And I value every relationship I have with all 5 of those kids. And I value what I have with Shauna. And I can fully admit I made a huge mistake with my friend and with my ex-wife. Now, I'm not condoning their behavior. That I don't have any effect on. I can look back and go, where did I F up? And that's a hard exercise to do. And did I do that on my own? By the way, I saw more than one therapist. I saw 2 of them. I did an anger management course. Dude, do you want to hear this story?
I love hearing this stuff. This is very deep. It's real.
This is crazy. So I went, the one therapist said, Joe, you know what? You're going through, like, because you can imagine, how angry would you be if you found out that your best friend was having sex with your wife?
It's ultimate betrayal.
Yeah. I don't know if it gets any worse, right?
Maybe a brother. So, that's about it. Yeah.
Like, I mean, and to me, there's, I don't know if those that you're listening, like, and I still believe it to this day. Like, there's a code. It's like, if let's say you had a girlfriend back in high school and you're now married, and, you know, like I was single and this girlfriend of yours is coming on to me, I would at the very least go, right, guy, just want you to know, man, like, you know, this girl, like, you guys dated in high school. Are you cool? Because there's a code, because it's like, especially if we're best pals, it's like, listen, if there's 7.5 billion people on this planet, and like, there's billions of people that I could be with, I could just say, like, that one's got to be hands off. Like, so to me, there was a code that was broken. Right. And
you're not talking about an ex either.
No.
That's the other thing.
This was happening, right? He was married, and he was married at the time too. Like, it was, yeah. So his wife, who I'm still friends with today, by the way, and she's a sweetheart. She's the godmother to both my girls. His wife was in our wedding party, and my ex-wife was maid of honor at their wedding. Like, I mean, it's crazy. Anyways, this therapist says to me, Joe, I want you to, I wonder if you're open to coming to this anger management course. I said, sure. I said, like, at that point, I'm eating up. I'm taking in personal development at that point, like Kobayashi's eating hot dogs. I'm just going, yeah, let's go. Right. So, I know I'm getting better. And I made a point, the minute that I found out that the affair was real, I stopped drinking. I made sure that I wasn't around anybody that was into, any type of pot or drug use. I wanted to make myself abundantly aware of my emotional state, because I knew that I had to go through the steps of grief. I'd had to grieve my relationship with my now soon-to-be ex-wife, and I'd have to grieve the relationship of my no longer best friend. And it took months. It took months of lots of hard work. And by the way, the two of them are together. They got married. She ended up telling me, by the way, over this process, that she was pregnant with his child. Oh yeah, dude. I mean, like, it huge, right? So I go to this anger management course. I'm looking at you on Zoom right now, and the look on your face or your eyes were like, what the? Yeah.
Yeah, this is a story.
Again, this happened, like, it's over 22 years ago. So I've done the work. So I can look at it now, and it's bizarre how time can go by, and I can almost giggle about it, because it made me a better man.
Yeah.
And so I go to the anger management course, and I walk in, and this was a 4-part series, a weekly thing. So I go in for session 1, and I sit down, And there are dudes in there, twice my size, tatted out, like members of bike gangs, a couple of Bravo, I mean, it was crazy, right? And here I am, this, you know, I'm going in like I'm practically in a suit, right? And I sit down and everybody's sharing their story about, yeah, I beat my old lady because she didn't get the milk or she didn't get my 6-pack. And everybody in there, Ryland, is there because the courts told them to go take an anger management course. I swear to you, I was the only volunteer, right? So they're all telling their story of how they got angry, and they had a physical altercation that led them to go to court, that led them to this anger management course. So I tell my story of essentially my best friend and my wife are having an affair and she's pregnant with his kid. And everybody's looking at me and going, did you hit him? And I'm like, no. And they're like, these guys were falling off their chairs going, how are you not in prison right now? And that's a legitimate question, right? And don't get me wrong. I wanted to go ballistic. And one of the things, the best outlets, martial arts, lifting weights. It wasn't booze. It wasn't drugs. And it wasn't going over there and being ridiculous. It was focus and do the work. And yeah, I mean, I have no problem telling you, I did a lot of crying about it. I had to. Mm-hmm. And I had to go through depression. And, so you go through denial, and then you go through anger, and then you go through bargaining, and then you go through, like so it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Those are the 5 steps of grief. But it's called DABDA, DABDA. And I went through it and I worked on it, and I went and talked to a pro, and then I talked to another pro, and then I joined a men's group, and that men's group was phenomenal. And because it was a group of dudes that had gone, they're in their own way. They had gone through some of the similar stuff. And what's the lesson? You got, I'm dropping the F-bomb here, bro.
All right.
You got fucking coaching. You got fucking coaching. And it was these people that helped me. So to say there and say that, yeah, I did it alone. None of the success that I have in my life did I do it alone. None of it. It all was because of other people, community, and creating something that I could be a part of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Such a powerful story. I really appreciate you sharing that, because it's really cool to see that you've done the work where you can talk about it, but for you to have transformed your whole perspective and very few people would look back at that and say, it was a great thing for me in the end, because, for me as a person, it's so much about, like, I had heard this today, we're falling into victimhood too easily in this day and age. And in that, I don't think too many people would argue you're a victim of something there. But at the same time, it's this, like, just allowing yourself to be a victim in that situation won't necessarily solve much.
No.
And for you to have this, I believe it's the stoic mindset of understanding your emotions, recognizing your emotions, and, recognizing what you could control. And if you ownership for what you could have controlled in that situation, it doesn't even matter if the outcome, it can't be changed, but future outcomes can be changed. Yeah. And it's very much like, bad things happen for a reason, but I actually say, I don't think bad things happen for a reason. I think you create a reason things happen. You have to reflect on things. It's not fate's job for you to learn. It's yours. And so in that case, that's such a beautiful thing. And I've had something similar. I just, like, I'll do a quick synopsis of mine.
Yeah, please.
I got caught with drugs when I was in my 20s on the way to Country Fest, and that led to, like,
I went to Country Fest lots of times, a lot of fun.
Yeah, don't speed on the way there. And
that's it.
So that was lesson 1, and then lesson 2. I got caught with drugs there, and so very embarrassing to have to show this to my family. I ended up doing a year sober, and in that year sober, which is already challenging because my friends did not have any sobriety.
Right. Sure.
And halfway through that year, the girl I was dating broke up with me, really for no real apparent reason that was clear to me. But what really resonated with me about your story was where you said, I want, sobriety and then in exercise. Like, I will honestly say that was the day I just committed my identity to exercise. Was like,
Yeah.
I finished a great boxing workout and I was just like, oh yeah, this is free. I get to just have fucking high and this appreciation. And I'll say, I'm not saying I wasn't pretty hooked on it, but the way that resonated with me in that moment, I still feel it and see it in this day in my mind. I've been just straight up hooked ever since. And that was a question I actually have for you, because I think it's so cool to see individuals like yourself that are very successful in their business. I mean, it helps that you were a part of the fitness industry, but and
now I'm not. I mean, now I'm in the sales training industry, right? Realistically, I mean, I help people in the fitness industry, but I help people in a variety of other industries, like whether you're in retail, whether you're in real estate, so coaching.
But just like how you haven't let the fitness like die out and it's a part of your future.
It absolutely, the discipline aspect of this, and discipline is a skill. And if you don't have the discipline to stick to a plan, then get help, because that outside help will help you stick to the plan.
Yeah.
Business owners are notorious for this. They think that now that they're a business owner, they're an island. And if you're not accountable to anybody, then how the hell is your business going to grow? So what I find interesting is all of the best coaches that I've ever had, including those like Tony Robbins, they have coaches that they're accountable to. It's part of that thing. And so, accountability, like you can have a mentor, and that's not the same as a coach.
No,
it's not the same. And so, fitness mindset and health mindset. You ask me, hey, Joe, how do you have all this energy? Because I can promise you, I mean, yes, I have a great relationship with coffee. Okay. That's not the winner here. The winner is, because I don't usually have my first cup of coffee until I'm usually about an hour and a half to 2 hours into my day. I'm making a point now of waiting. And I love the smell of coffee first thing in the morning. I do my cold showers. I'm disciplined on cold showers, or if I'm at the lake, I jump in the water and it's effing cold. That fires up natural endorphins. And so it's the routine of discipline. And I'll full transparency, Ryland. I mean, when I started the dojo and online and everything else, I'm late to the party. Like, I didn't get into Instagram in 2009. I got into it in essentially 2020. So I'm late. I'm very late. So I'm still growing my fan base and I'm doing what I can. So I made a point of saying, listen, because of my ambition for my business, instead of working out every day, I'm going to work out 3 days a week. And, because I need to spend more time on building this. Like, I've had other businesses before, and I know that the commitment that it takes, and the benefit now is I've got a team of people. Like 2.5 years ago, I was literally an army of one. Now I've got 13 people on my team. So it affords me to be able to take a step back. And I still work a lot of hours, not because I have to, because I want to. Because I have goals in mind. If I want to build this house, and the house isn't about the house, the why behind the house is I know one day I'm going to have grandchildren. Like, I walked my youngest daughter down the aisle a little over a year ago. One day there's going to be really little people, and I want to be able to have that ability to take them fishing or just playing and running around the backyard. Like, Halloween just happened. I don't know when you're going to put this up in the podcast world, but Halloween just happened a couple of days ago. It's still my favorite time of the year. I get to dress up, be foolish, give kids candy, and just have a great time and act like a kid. I want to be able to do that and I don't think I'll ever retire, just because I'm having too much fun and I'm growing something that's making a difference.
And that's beautiful. I like that you resonated with, hey, it's basically your act of discipline. And I love that you're really calling out something with entrepreneurs, is that they don't like to have bosses. And
they don't.
And so they like I'm thinking of one of my clients right away, and that's why he lacks consistency is like it's unless it's really you have a meeting with someone so you got to be there, it's
Right.
you're practicing inconsistency. So it's a really valuable thing, and I'd love to hear you talk about a little bit more about your program so people can understand more about it and how you help all these,
Yeah.
because coaching is so valuable. I got to do some of your training and I hope to do it again more in the future because
Right
it's
on, man.
important for people to appreciate these skills. So
It's
why don't you tell us more about it?
Sure. So the misconception with sales training is people think it's going to be, oh, I'm going to be manipulative or I have to lie, and this is not the case at all. So the essence of what the SOS, which stands for Sales Objection System, and the dojo, similar to like a martial arts space where you go and practice, this is a space where we meet online in a group setting where we record it, where you have someone in the room who has a higher level of experience and they hold you accountable to how you handle and communicate when you're talking about objections. So we do a step by step, week after week, just like you have a fitness and health and mindset transformation with people over 12 weeks. We do the same thing with objection handling over 12 weeks. I've created a program, and I say we because we're a team, and we give people access to how to build rapport, how to make a discovery process so that you can develop a way to have a conversation. And then how do you transition to, is it okay to pitch? Are you okay if you want to hear about what my program's about? You got to earn the right to get to that point. Then we go into how to handle the objections when they do come up, and then getting people across that starting line of starting to work with you, whether they're buying a product. Because to me, everybody's interested in, hey, I want to get more leads. I want to get more leads. And how do I handle objections and that kind of thing? And it's more leads. Your best source of leads, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a salesperson, your best source of leads are your sales. Like, it's not spending money on ads where you're just going to blow your head off and you're just giving Facebook money. It's like hiring a lawyer. If you could avoid the lawyer, if you could avoid paying for Facebook ads, you can get better results. Like I told you before, my typical return on investment when I get somebody in our program and they're delighted with the results, because I don't want to make people happy. I want them delighted. They're telling other people about the program. So what we do is week after week, we add a little bit more to the exercises and we practice, because you can't just like a fitness program. And this is exactly what sales training, you can't just go into the gym and work 8 hours and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I'm fit. It's not how it works. You can't go to the batting cage and swing and swing and swing and then go and play in the game just because you went to the batting cage once and then go to the major leagues and think you're going to be hitting homers every time. It's not how it works. It's the same principle when we're talking about conversations in sales. Mm-hmm. If you want to help people, you have to develop a process and then you've got to practice it. And so that's what we do. And it's fun. We have live role play. So there's 4 things that you need to be able to master anything in life. 4 things, and I'll finish with this. Okay, the first thing you need is a valid environment, a place where it's safe to make mistakes, and that's where we give people, like I say it all the time, it's part of my logo, the hand clasp over the closed fist. It's a sign of respect. You're gonna F up here. Don't worry, we all fuck up. The thing is, here, better to make mistakes here than on a sales call because that's expensive. Second thing is we do quality repetitions. In anything in life, you want to become a master at anything, you need a valid environment, quality repetitions. The third thing you need is timely feedback. So we do it live. So if you're making a mistake in your approach, we're going to say, whoa, Rylan, stop. Try that again. And then you put in the reps. And the last thing you need is deliberate practice. So some people say, well, I practice, but they're practicing with their wives or their buddy, and they're not practicing with somebody who's a black belt in the process. They're practicing with another white belt, or worse, they're practicing in front of the mirror, or they're practicing with their dog. Well, that's not deliberate practice. So you got valid environment, a lot of reps, quality, timely feedback, what we call course corrections, and finally deliberate practice. And that's where we guarantee people their money back if they're not delighted. And that's how we are growing our business.
Love it. Yeah, and I can just speak from experience. Doing the reps, doing the practice in there is super valuable. It's like, I'm fairly comfortable talking to people, but then you slip up. You actually put these us or buts. It's
Yeah.
language, the head tilts, like so many things that you guys look at, and I think it's a great program. And you work with all sorts of people. You work with people not just fitness. I remember the one guy had a fisherman's gear shop. Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yeah. Yeah, we've had people like, and currently, like I deal with bicycle retailers, electric bike stores, people in auto sales. But then let's go over to the coaching side and fitness side: weight loss coaches, nutrition coaches, fitness and strength coaches. I've got a guy who does poker mindset coaching. I don't even play poker, right? I'm helping this person with their approach to handling objections. I've got somebody in Tucson, Arizona, who's a doctor of rejuvenative medicine. He does stem cell injections. I have no clue what he does. He will say, without the dojo, he wouldn't have tripled his business. I've got copywriters, right? People that, they write for a living to, get people to open up emails. Plenty of copywriters in the dojo. So it's been really a blessing, because it's the hardest part of sales. It's that feeling when somebody resists, where they say, you know what, it's expensive. I can't afford it. I need to think about it. I'm going to do some more research. I have to go speak with my spouse. What kind of deal can you give me? I'm not sure if this is going to work for me. And those examples, we help you literally cancel them out, so that you get people saying, yeah, you know what, let's do this. And they're excited. That's what we want. And then we show you other techniques that help you grow your business, which is fun. It's just fun. And it's really rewarding, Ryland. I mean, I've had the opportunity to go speak at events and meet people like you. And now I'm on your podcast. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah. It's really cool how it kind of came full circle like this. And so, and again, I love that program. I do plan on hopping in eventually. My next question though is actually just whether it's business or personal, as it is a Strong Ambition podcast. What's your most recent ambition? What's coming down the pipeline for you?
My most recent ambition, that's a great question. My most recent ambition is I actually want to drop, I want to get leaner. So right now I'm sitting at, believe it or not, I don't weigh myself every day. So I got back from a fishing trip. I had traveled a lot in September and all the way to mid-October. And I was traveling like a madman, eating out way too much. And some of my exercise, because of the travel schedule and everything, I was making up excuses. There was no gym. I could have trained. I could have done body weight exercises in my hotel room, right? When I'm committed and I can do it. So the answer to that is I want to get down to my quote unquote fighting weight of 175. I know I've already dropped 4 pounds since I can tell. I mean, I used to compete in natural bodybuilding contests, so I know what it takes to get there. And yeah, I mean, it's that roller coaster that we talked about before we got on. Like I'm ups and downs. I've been as heavy as 206. That'll never happen again, ever, ever. So I could feel it, around my waistline. It's like, yo, get back on plan here, Joe. And so that's my strong ambition. The latest thing that you're asking about, it's not so much about my business. We have, my team and we have goals. Like in my Facebook group, our goal is, hey, we want to grow the Facebook group before the end of the year to 1,000 people. And it's free. It's free. So, if you're interested in joining my Facebook group and getting a ton of value, I'm sure I could send the link over to Ryland, check all the details.
Yeah. Beautiful, man. I love that. Again, just, the fact that you're an entrepreneur and you just, no matter what, you're coming back to that discipline that started it all. And I think that's a beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Well, why don't you leave the listeners with where they can find your stuff?
So you can go to sosdojo.com, literally each letter, sosdojo.com. You can follow me on all socials. It's at Coach Joe Marcoux. And yeah, if you're following at Coach Joe Marcoux, join the free Facebook group, because I'm dropping so much free stuff, value. I just give. I'm a believer in what's called a giver's gain. It comes back full circle. I'm a believer in karma. So come get it, come take it, enjoy it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on, Joe. We're going to have you on again in a year, and we'll find out about that weight cut.
Yeah, man. Right on. It's an honor. Really appreciate you, man.
Thanks again to Joe. That was a wonderful conversation and such a raw, real story, and probably one of the most real I've had on here before. And for him to take that notion of, hey, what did I do wrong is so incredible, so beautiful. And I think it's something we should all learn about. That to me is the Stoic mindset. That is amore fati. I learned about this from Ryan Holiday, and he talks about it's the love of fate, no matter what it has. He talks about stories where no matter how bad it ends up, how can you look at it in a light that, hey, embrace it. This is what life gave you. What can we do with it? And for Joe to take it upon himself to get help, to get his mindset, and to be open and honest that he was thinking about depression to the point of suicide is just, that's so raw. And for him to talk about it so openly is incredible. It's just awesome that he's had that much growth through his life. And you see how good he's doing in life. He's doing very well. And I love working with him. I plan on working with him in the future. And I just always love conversations with him. High energy. He's always positive. I haven't seen that guy in a bad mood. And that's what can come from that kind of mindset. So I'm super, super grateful that we got to have him on. I'm certainly going to have him on again in the future and find out how his fitness cut goes. As he did mention, he did fitness competitions, and I got to see some of his natural bodybuilding physiques, and the guy was shredded. He didn't mess around. So I'm certain he's going to do a great job of this cut as well. And again, we'll have him on in the future, and we'll talk more about all these different things. Especially, I'm glad that he talked about NLP, super fascinating field, and what it can help, not just with sales, but with yourself. It's neuro-linguistic programming. It's how you're talking to yourself. I've had Jason Brooks talk about this before. It's one thing to have habits. How about your habits of thinking? And that's what NLP really is talking about. So amazing story. And I think if there's anything you can take from this conversation, which I think there was a lot, I think there was a great deal of knowledge that he kind of, just from his life experiences, that you can really appreciate. It is that idea of, not staying in victimhood, but what can I do better? How can I personally improve? And that's what really gives him that strong ambition mindset himself, because he embraces the path and he chooses to improve himself. I think that's damn inspiring. So with that being said, you always got to remember, it's not about that pursuit of happiness. It's going to be about the happiness within that pursuit. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next time.